Hello. I'm Kirsten Johnson, and I couldn't be more thrilled to introduce the star sleuths, delightful people, brilliant provocateurs, Jazmin, Olivia, and Yeelen Cohen, who we were expecting to see Getty Cohen, who is the producer of the film. Yeelen is the fabulous cinematographer of this film. There's some familial relationship, there's partnership between Yeelen and Jazz, and Getty is the proud mother of Yeelen and also the producer. So, and Olivia is now, I would say, family also.
Chosen family, yeah.
Chosen family,
the
all the
family
way.
Tree.
Absolutely. You raise so many significant questions about the times we live in, and you do it with such mischief. So, I think there's excitement in this room. I saw incredible excitement when we saw it at the Rooftops Film Festival screening, and the sense that we're in new territory. There's new language being used. So talk to us as the director of this vision. Talk about your wish for creating new language, creating erratum, working with the glitches in the system, and working on hunches.
Thank you.
And I love the moment where you realize, like, I was right.
No, thank you. It's such a joy to be in conversation with you and in conversation with your work. The film that y'all have seen here, this is now our 6-year anniversary, and we just picture locked a few weeks ago. So it has been a process. We knew from the beginning that it was going to be a self-reflexive documentary, and we knew that we were going to use this term like hybrid to allow us to, I think there's power.
You just bust open that term. That term is gone. You created new language.
And I think also for me, I'm like, isn't every documentary hybrid? At the end of making this, I'm like, every choice around where you're positioning the camera, when you call cut, who is editing, like all of that is artifice. And so honestly, in terms of like working with Yeelen and Olivia, I think it was like the hybridity was a really safe place where it's like anytime I wanted to like do another take of something and be like, oh, we didn't quite get that. Let's try that again. I'd be like, this is fine. We're a hybrid. And then anytime Yeelen wanted me to do another take, I'd be like, this is a documentary. Like, I'm not an actor. What do you want from me? So really, it was like, frankly, and also we were exploring a lot in pitching the project with this idea of like critically fabulating a fabulous backstory for Mavis Beacon and being like, we don't have enough role models in technology that are Black women. So like I will grasp at straws and like very much clearly inspired by The Watermelon Woman, this idea of like, I just need, like, I'll take fictional, real, I will take a Black woman role model with a complex backstory. As you see in the film, we come to understand that Renee is very particular about her image, and there has been a lot of things that have been thrust onto her as a result of her being this character. And so that's when we started to kind of walk back this idea of deep faking and making a backstory for Mavis Beacon where she's like a queer lesbian sex worker or something, like, it's like all the things that I would want to see to like break open my own ideas of respectability and role models. We realized that without Renee's participation and collaboration in that was just like not a path we wanted to explore.
Well, and the moments in the film where you give us these windows into concepts like critical fabulation. I think there's no question, watching the Democratic Convention in this last week, there was like lots of fabulation that made this last week possible in all kinds of ways, and yet here it was in the real. But is this the real? All of these questions that are a part of our work as filmmakers, what are we doing with other people's images? What are we doing with our own images? So let's talk about the image making and stepping into the place of being on the screen. You were making that choice with a collaborator who you could talk back to. And Olivia, at what point did you feel like I'm ready to be on the screen, not just as someone who Jazmin is talking to, as someone who's been a part of the world of questioning what's possible in technology in relation to yourself? What was that act of stepping onto the screen for you?
I mean, I kind of always trusted the process, I think. When we were in the kind of research and development phase, it was just a really exciting time, and there was all of these dots to be connected. I think when we like had tied on our shoelaces and were ready to kind of hit the ground running, and the time came to like, yeah, go on this adventure and be on camera, I had already so much trust in Yeelen as a cinematographer, in Jazz as a friend, and as someone with really deep integrity. I wasn't really very stressed about like the idea of like, okay, like now I have to exist as a researcher, not just behind the camera, but also in front of the camera, because I don't know, I just kind of trusted that, you know, that the gaze was loving and that I could continue on as myself, and trust that like the person who was kind of like capturing it wasn't looking to, you know, harm me, or that the image wouldn't be used for any aim other than, you know, the highest good. So that was the easiest part. The hardest part was finding Renee.
It was indeed, and you were not stopping, and you were going to let her go on without you, which was quite selfless in that moment. The gazer down there at the end. What's your relationship to the process of this language creation? Because this language creation was happening on many levels all the time, obviously iterative. What were the things that were priorities for you, Yeelen, as you were filming these two sleuths?
Wow. I think we always knew that we were like, it was like a literally a shot in the dark. Like, you know, like at every stage of the process. So, I think, yeah, it's interesting seeing like, even at times, even with your direction, Jazz, like it was like, oh wow, you know, I mean, it really started off as this the camera was at first kind of static, and I think it started like, you know, it started kind of moving as the adventure kind of kept on going. And I think at first there was a certain rigidity that we had with ourselves. Like it has to be perfect. The camera can't shake. But it's interesting. Someone who had watched the film was like, I really like that sometimes we felt this energy behind the camera, like, oh, even in the reframing and kind of in the slight movements of the camera, I felt like there was a energy behind it, and that kind of made me feel good about it, because I was like, there was just so much doubt, you know, like in terms of a lot of imposter syndrome, in terms of like, you know, being non-binary, person of color, holding, you know, a camera, and also like, you know, a lot of YouTube school, and yeah, having to just figure it out without really knowing what it's going to look like. But yeah, I think in terms of the documentary and narrative narrative pipeline or sort of exchange, I think, yeah, I never thought we were making a documentary. I think, and now when we watch it, I'm like, oh wow, that kind of resonated, or like the way it was shot, like they were kind of to me, they were kind of like actors. And so it was much more of a, this is non-fiction fiction. And I always, I think, had that, like, I didn't have any doubts about that, basically.
Right.
That was the only
Right,
thing. Yeah.
right. I want to ask a question of the audience. How many people had the feeling at certain moments in the movie that you were no longer watching a movie, that you were watching thinking? Right? Because I think this sort of breakthrough moment where you've decided to and there are other people who have done desktop films before. We know there's a lot of great practitioners of that, and yet there's a way in which when you start pulling up screens and you're going on a little wormhole, we forget we're watching a movie, right? Something else is happening. And I'm just curious about that for you as a director. Like, it felt like you were moving multidimensionally. The screen stopped being a screen, I think is what happened. There was a, it's like this image that you found, right? The hand breaks through the screen. So the dimensionality of this, we can call it a film, we can call it a documentary, but of this collective act, what happened for you with that, and how did you figure out for yourself how you wanted to find equilibrium and disequilibrium in it?
I love how you ask questions. And also, it's worth noting that KJ actually watched the version of the film that we submitted to Sundance and gave the best feedback I received in the entire process. So thank you for that. But yeah, we knew. Okay, so one thing that's worth naming is, like, in addition to being cinematographer, Yeelen was also one of 3 editors. So there was also John Fine and myself. And in that early version that we were submitting to Sundance, the desktops weren't fully fleshed out. And that's because I was incredibly protective over them and being like, nobody other than me, maybe Olivia, could frankly do this because it's from our algorithms, right? So it's like it needs to translate with all of the media that we've collected. And the hope is that it feels like you're either like a hacker or spirit has like taken over the desktop, and it's kind of just like showing you all the things that we're working through. And then there's also, I don't know how much of this is also born out of me being like a first-time filmmaker and wanting to like entice everyone at every moment, like I had so much to get across here. And a lot of it is like, I have a politic, clearly. And the more we talk about the film, the more I come to see it as an advocacy film as well, around like just the ethics of tech in this moment. And so to me, it was also like, how are we going to get audiences to sit through a documentary essentially about cyberfeminism, and also Mavis Beacon, but also about like all of the things we think around this character. So it's also just employing like the same kind of technique that you see like TikToks for like Minecraft, where it's like there's 2 videos and one is doing something and the other one's giving you information. And that's also clearly like the type of content I consume. I'm chronically online, which is a term that I've also seen unpacked for its ableism, right? Of like, what does it mean to be chronically anything? And then it's like, well, what does it mean to be online? Is this healthy in a long-term sense? What is this doing to us? So it's like, yeah, I, for better or worse, have been using that to describe my own relation to the internet. And it's like we got to show.
It's nice to see you out of the house.
It's nice to get out of the house, and we got to show it like last week at Ghetto Film School to a bunch of teenagers, and like there was a group of teenage boys that were like bobbing their heads at the end, and it's like, I never thought I could get you to think about like cyberfeminism for an hour and 40 minutes and actually be excited at the end of it. So yeah, I think we were trying to make a film for our younger selves, and a film that people who like maybe bought the software for themselves and their kids could be like, oh, I'm better understanding like my kid who wants me to use they them pronouns, and then also like Gen Alpha who have never heard of Mavis Beacon can also like take something from it. So trying to truly make an intergenerational movie here.
Intergenerational audience, I'm looking at you. Is there anyone who would like to ask a question now that I got to ask a question? I see a hand in the back. Yes, coming with a microphone.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for the film. I think it was really exciting to see some of the like desktop documentary practices in a feature-length documentary. I was wondering about the process of creating those segments and like choreographing the screen. If you could talk a little bit more about, because I think that is like a very personal expression of like, this is how I think to like open each thing. So was that something that you sort of did like intuitively, or was there a lot of rehearsal of like getting the timing right on opening each window, and was there post editing and like how you got it the way you wanted, I guess?
No, thank you. I could talk about this all day. So like on a structural level, there's like just a utilitarian purpose to the desktops in terms of like, we were making this film mostly during the pandemic. We couldn't interview and cite all of our sources in original content, and this allowed us to be in dialogue with people that we that have since like even passed on. So Olivia and I knew that there were certain concepts or like a glossary, a takeaway from the film that we wanted everyone to have. And we thought about those desktops kind of functioning as a manifesto. And if you did just watch them in succession in a gallery or something, you would still be able to like walk away with something that would connect back to this larger film. What was interesting is like it's very much like writing an essay with other people's words. So there were certain ideas for desktops that we wanted to get across, and then like the language of the YouTubers and whatnot did not support that. And so in that way, it did kind of have a mind of its own too, of like, it was like editing in real time and being like, I have this massive folder and I know in this one we're talking about critical fabulation, or, you know, it's also, I think, like the clarity of what glossary terms as the desktops kind of spiral out, even that spirals out. And then, of course, some of them are also helping us convey the passage of time, what's going on for Olivia and I. So the limitations of insisting and being a perfectionist and saying that I only wanted to edit it is I actually don't understand After Effects. So I was doing a combination of like treating Premiere like collage and bringing in stills, and then there were certain things where it's like I just need to literally screen record this. So like I had a user on my computer for Olivia's desktop and a user on my computer for mine, and I'd screen record it, and then I worked with an amazing editor, Vanessa DeCastro, who helped me round the corners and like move things and like make sense of the compositions. And so yeah, for the most part, like they looked the same, but they were crude, and I was like, I want this to actually like have the like, I don't know, apple roundness to it, so people don't feel like it's so cut and pasted, and that there is that question of like, wait, is this all screen recorded? Which is, I would say, like 40% is screen recorded and the rest is kind of edited together.
So at the beginning, you played with deepfakes like really self-consciously, and it created this uncanny effect with like Obama and stuff. And then at the end, it seemed very straightforward, your decision to stop pushing with Renee and sort of stop seeking information. And I almost expected you to go the deepfake route and make up reality of her being like a lesbian sex worker or whatever. And, you know, maybe I would have enjoyed that, I don't know, but it seemed like you were very conscious of holding the line and not pushing on reality any further. Did you find that challenging to do? And sort of what were your choices around that?
Yeah, I so appreciate that question. Initially, and if you've been following the project for April Fools many years ago, like we've been deep faking and having a lot of fun with that. And this project started before like the real popularization of AI and deepfakes in AI. And so initially that felt really like fun. And Olivia has actually encouraged me to use the phrase detournement, to like create that distinction around like, this is appropriative. Like we're working with original materials. The Obama clip is because I found another video of him saying computer and like put the words in. The Oprah clip is from her talking about playing a character named Mavis. Wendy Williams is a little bit of Photoshop. So to me, and even choosing to include those people, like that was a political choice, because it's like, okay, Obama, you're a public servant. Oprah, you're a billionaire. And Wendy Williams, we're having a really interesting conversation right now about like her both as a meme and as a real autonomous person who's entitled to privacy. So even just arriving at those three people was like, okay, I feel comfortable playing with your images, because there were other things where it's like Quinta Brunson and Meg the Stallion, and it's like, oh, the only reason I could make this deep fake is because they were talking about women who they actually cared about. And so I also didn't want to play with that reality. And then also it became a very easy choice to depart from that once we learned that Renee had scrubbed her digital footprint. And then also when AI made it so that a deep fake could be seamless. It was no longer like fun or clever. And so, yeah, Olivia, in her own like background as a technologist, she's like makes a lot of like plays with the art of glitches, right? And she's used this phrase, homegrown glitches. And then there's that like moment when all these filters were doing these like really tacky glitches, and it's like, yeah, I think there's something about like we're very much like analog girlies who are also like web native. So yeah, we want to build the things, and then it didn't feel good to build them anymore.
Jess, will you go back to the term that you just used, that you said Olivia encouraged you to use?
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, so Olivia encouraged me to use the term detournement, and I actually think detournement. Yeah, do you want to talk about that?
Yes.
Detournement, it's D-E, an accent that goes this way over the E,
Yeah.
and then tour, like going on a tourment. It comes from, well, it was really popular with like the Situationist International in terms of like kind of this like leftist anarchist way of appropriating images and reconstructing them for a purpose. So like kind of like really iconic things. So like in the case of Barack Obama, the analogy is really clear because a lot of the content of him speaking is like public fair use because of it's in his capacity as the president of the United States. And so it's kind of this act of appropriation or using these original sources in order to kind of do this wink or make a statement about the original source. And I think the overarching statement that Jazz has been trying to make from the beginning is like, what would it feel like to make the definitive film about Mavis Beacon, and what would our society look like if Mavis Beacon was like had all the fame and was this like beloved icon of like Black technological history, and had the statue and had the loving Oprah address and all of these things. And so kind of playing in that sandbox, you kind of are able to like see a bit of the film in terms of like how icons are made and how truth is made and how we kind of prop up our heroes.
That feels very timely at this moment in history. So we're all going to be encouraged to use the word detournement, which we can say in French or in English as we wish. We can detourn it as we want to. I believe that as much as we would all like to stay here together, we are being detourné out of this room. But I am certain that these delicious, lovely, delightful, brilliant people will be out, and you can meet them live and in person. They're not online, they're here. Thank you all so much.